The Human Development Institute hosts the State of HDI podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and may not reflect the views of the University of Kentucky. A downloadable transcript is available in the description. Thank you for listening.
All right. Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us on the State of HDI, a podcast of the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute. This is Patty Singleton, and with me in the studio again is Jackie Kearns, Program Director of Communication Initiatives. Jackie has spent her career as a champion of students with significant disabilities in ensuring all students have access to communication. Jackie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Yes, and this is a follow-up to the episode 4 of the State of HDI, where we had an opportunity to really kind of talk through what communication is and why it's important. And today we are going to actually walk through some facts or fiction based on, Jackie, a lot of the information that you've gathered over your career. So what I'll do is state something, and then you can follow up with whether that is actual fact or fiction. So to start, the absence of clear expressive communication like oral speech or a sign and the perceived presence of intellectual disabilities means that the student may not benefit from communication intervention. Jackie, is that fact or fiction?
That is fiction. The fact is the belief that children who experience delays in communication and cognitive development are unable to benefit from language intervention has not been substantiated, and that's from our researchers Buchelman and Miranda and the National Joint Committee on the Communication of Persons with Severe Disabilities, which still exists. Their most recent one is 2016. So there is no literature that says students with intellectual disabilities will not benefit from communication intervention. All students benefit from communication intervention. I can't say that strongly enough, loud enough, more emphasis, less emphasis. It's truth. Intervene. Do it now.
For our next one, speech language services should be discontinued if the student is not going to use oral speech. Jackie, is that fact or fiction?
That is also fiction. The fact is that speech language services should be continued in order to facilitate language development, the use of robust augmentative alternative communication systems or devices, literacy, and social engagement. And this is per the American Speech and Hearing Association practice guidelines. So releasing students from services based on their lack of development of progress in oral speech is fiction. Now, progress in learning to use a device depends on the extent to which the people in their circles, their communication partners, use that device with them.
All right, Jackie, next, fact or fiction? The student's perceived level of cognitive functioning has an impact on their candidacy for AAC use.
And this one is also fiction and very similar to the first question we had. The fact is no empirically validated method for making candidacy decisions based on cognitive ability exists. That was in 2003, and it continues to this day. There is no empirical validated data to say, well, you have a severe disability, therefore you aren't eligible. That is incorrect. What is more important is that we find the factors that impact the student's ability to communicate, and we mitigate those factors, and we find the right system that matches them, their abilities.
So next, Jackie, fact or fiction? Inclusive settings are not conducive to intensive communication intervention.
Well, interestingly, this is kind of counterintuitive. This is also fiction. The fact is, students with disabilities and communication challenges in general education classes were involved in significantly higher levels of communication interactions than those in self-contained settings. That was in 2004, and then most recently repeated in a study by Kathy G. in 2018 or 2019 in a randomized pairs study where communication improved. So students in the inclusive classrooms who had communication needs significantly improved when compared to the peer who was in a self-contained classroom with a similar level of communication need. So inclusive settings, counterintuitive, but inclusive settings are the best place for students with complex communication needs because of the presence of robust peers who have robust use of communication and language.
Next, we must require the student to use the AAC device for all communicative intentions. Is that fact or fiction?
Well, that's fiction too. The fact is, we all use a variety of ways to communicate our intentions. We use facial expressions, we use body language, we do use our vocalizations or our words. And our words are effective, but that means that kids need to have devices that have words on them. So we want the student to use the device for the things that they can't communicate otherwise, and for the purposes that require a more robust system for communication, for making sentences, for saying, I hurt here. My fingers hurt, rather than pointing and maybe getting it or not being able to point, and I have something that hurts and not be able to tell you.
So fact or fiction, AAC SGD use interferes with the development of speech.
You know, I'm so glad this one is in here. First of all, a speech generating device is an SGD, speech generating device. The fact that it interferes is a big myth. The fact is, AAC has been shown to facilitate the development of oral speech. And we've seen this over and over in our core vocabulary training, even with a folder that has pictures on it that make sentences. When the communication partner models the use of that folder, they have to slow their speech down because they have to find and point to the picture. I want more, which is different than I want more. It's I want more. When you slow your speech and you model, and most people are modeling backwards, just so you know that, you give the person, the communicator, enough time to process what you just said. And so that improves their use of verbal speech. So does it make a huge improvement? I don't know. We don't know that. But it does improve significantly. So that gives them another mode. They have both the speech generating device for when it's not working, but then that also gives them some improvement in some of the other modes that they use.
All right, Jackie, last one. Fact or fiction, aided language modeling is an evidence-based practice for communication intervention.
And that one is a fact. It is an evidence-based practice, and I just described it. When you are using a device and you are using it and you're pointing to the pictures for the student. And what's important about aided language modeling is there's not a requirement that they follow the model, just that you model. When we teach children to speak, we don't say, now say it. We say, oh, you want more. Okay, here's more. When you're modeling, you go, oh, you said you want more. So you're showing them how to use the device, where the words are. The words don't move on the page. They stay in the same place. And then we go ahead with the communication exchange. They get to see how it works. Then when they need to use it, they'll be able to find it.
Jackie, I thank you again for sitting down with us today. And any last words?
I would say the last words is never too early. It's never too late. Using a device does not make an individual dependent on it. And we want to use all the communication modes that a person has. We want to use the device, but we also want to use all the facial expressions and body language and all the ways that we all communicate. And we want to be good communication partners. And maybe our next segment will be how to be a good communication partner. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.